Serious, what's something that mentally and/or emotionally broke you? Story 1. My fiancé died the day after we got engaged. Edit, you guys are alright. I've been working all day, but I'll fill in some details when I get home. For now, I'll say there were no drugs or alcohol involved. She was fine, then sick, then gone in less than 24 hours. To those with sincere words, I truly appreciate it. To those making jokes, bring it on. Humor is one of the ways I've coped with things through the years. Edit 2, this shit's a downer, so don't read if you're not up for it. She died of meningitis. We spent an awesome day together while she was back in town from college, and I asked her that afternoon. Later, she said her legs were going numb and her back hurt. We went to the hospital because they had just had a whole presentation about the symptoms of meningitis at her school. The doctor did some tests and said everything was negative L, so they sent us home. We went to bed thinking everything would be fine. I woke up sometime around 2 a.m. and looked at her. She was covered in sweat and turning blue, so I picked her up and carried her to the car. We hauled ass back to the ER, but she stopped breathing before we got there and didn't regain consciousness again. At least I was holding her hand the whole way. The doctor did say they got her heart started a couple times, but all of her organs failed and her body completely shut down, so they had to call it. Later, they asked if I wanted the ring. But they said they had to cut it off because her body had swollen so much. I told them to keep it because I wouldn't have been able to handle what it meant if it was in one piece. To answer the other obvious question, I'm as alright as I get. Lately I've been thinking about our first days more than the last one. It's hard to tell if that makes it better or worse though. Relationships are hard. Anytime things get too good, there's a compulsion to pull away for self-preservation. There's no making it through of another round of that. Thank you all again for your kind words and thoughts, and jokes. Pay attention to how you feel and listen if someone tells you something is wrong with them. Finally, tell the people that matter to you how you feel as often as you can. Story 2. Filing my dad's bankruptcy, getting him diagnosed for early onset Alzheimer's/dementia, and being his primary caregiver. It completely reverses the father/son role in a way I was not prepared for. Better now, but still is heartbreaking. Story 3. My house caught fire when I was sleeping and I saw my baby's crib go up in flames. He survived, but it fucked me up hard. Edit, this comment blew up. The fire was a freak accident started by a damaged electrical cord on a humidifier. My boy is 7 now and other than his scarring, is a happy, healthy, and awesome little dude. If you're feeling brave, here's a picture of his crib, the next day. Lastly, we survived thanks to a working smoke alarm. Check yours today. It could save a life. Story 4. My little cousin, 19, hung himself in October. That feeling of holding his cold body as I cut him down from his noose will forever haunt me. I dream of it often. Story 5. Finding my twin brother dead. Story 6. Hearing my mom ask if it was going to hurt to die. Few minutes later she took her last breath. Squeezed my hand and a slow release. Am I okay? Nah. A year and a half later I'm still not. Story 7. When the police told me my fiancé had been killed by a drunk driver immediately outside of our neighborhood. It didn't help that the police lost the driver in the hospital, letting him escape for about 30 hours. Edit, I was fortunate to have a great network of friends and family to support me. Part of what really helped me was giving up on the idea of justice or that things can be made right. That helped me sever the tie to the accident, acknowledge my fiancée and remember her for her life and not her death. Additionally, my parents and I established a scholarship in my fiancée's honor for students like her, young women in STEM fields. That helped me keep her memory alive and salvage some of the goodness in the world we lost when she was taken from us. Story 8. Just went through a divorce. One day I'm up, the next I'm down. Today I'm pretty fucking down. Edit. The amount of replies and kind words and encouragement and advice I have received is overwhelmingly wonderful. Thank you all you so much, and I hope this thread has helped others going through something similar. May you all find joy in your lives. Sometimes you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. Story 9. Having a mother with schizophrenia. Such a tough illness for someone to experience, and tough on a family. Story 10. Seeing someone whom you had complete faith in, just switch on you and actively try to hurt you. Story 11. I was trafficked. Took me a long time to be back to kind of normal. Story 12. I was in therapy and was nervous about my child's upcoming birthday party because of serious anxiety issues. She told me to imagine the worst thing happening, and when the party is over I would realize everything was okay. Day of birthday party, I received an out-of-state call from a coroner. My mom was found dead in her apartment. An investigation occurred, but it was determined she had a diabetic episode, hit her head on the kitchen counter, bled out and died. An hour later my friend arrived, hysterically crying, indicating she just got a call her mom died. I was numb and broken. Life has never been the same since. Story 13. My 5-year-old got diagnosed with brain cancer. Edited to add he's 14 now and doing well. Story 14. When I was 13 and told my family that I'd been raped by a grown man that had taken me and 2 other underage friends of mine to a motel to roofie us. My grandmother scowled at me with disgust as I sat there with my tail between my legs, feeling more shame than I'd ever felt. She told me I needed to learn how to keep my legs closed. I got a huge talking to from the adults and was punished and slut-shamed. I'm 31 now and the thought of this still gives me a pain in my chest. Story 15. When I found my fiancé dead on the ground after I came home from work. I was 22 at the time and it broke me in all the ways. Story 16. 10 years ago I was falsely arrested for a DUI. I was acquitted, but I lost everything in the processes. It wasn't just the arrest, it was the whole system and procedures along the way that broke me. I had always defended cops and the judicial system, but you would never know unless you are pulled through it. First, after the arrest, I was fired. I was a bar manager for a huge HOA near Yosemite. I guess they thought of me as a liability, but when I asked why I was fired they said, "We don't have to give you a reason." But I later found out that was the reason. Then I just watched my house foreclosed, my car stolen and destroyed, and everything else, storage auction, went away. By the time I was arraigned it was all gone. I watched how the DA kept extending and prolonging the trial, saying he was still investigating, while my court-appointed lawyer kept getting me to PLE bargain. I had to show court every time, so all they were trying to do is get me to not show. Nobody cared if I was innocent, they just want their conviction percent to stay high. Anyway, I was found not guilty in 10 minutes by a jury. It took 5 years of my life and no lawyer would call back when I wanted to sue. Cops are untouchable. I'm a whole different person since this occurred. I hate going anywhere. I don't trust anyone. I hate cops and courts, and I don't trust them keeping us safe anymore. It's just a business, that's all. Cops pull in the sales, and courts make sure pay. Story 17. Parasailing accident. Boat pulling us lost all electricity after a larger boat passed and it crashed hard over the wake. I was 800 foot in the air, attached to a steel contraption with my 2 kids on either side of me, with a mass of ropes above us leading to the parachute/sail. It created enough drag that the impact wasn't as horrific as it could have been, but plummeting hundreds of feet through the air into the ocean and then realizing the metal contraption is pulling you and your kids under. My son couldn't get on his back, so his life vest wasn't working properly. My daughter was screaming because her arm was tangled in the rope. My son was 7, she was 9. Coast Guard was called in for rescue. Fuck. It was in 2020. I will never be the same person. I have flashbacks every day. Edit to add, my kid survived. Sorry if that was unclear. Story 18. Watching my grandma on my mom's side go through hospice. I have never seen a human slowly deteriorate like that. I was happy to think I would get to spend some time with her and comfort her because the year prior my other grandma died unexpectedly and I never got to say bye. As each day went on she slowly lost any ability to think or properly communicate to the point that it was like her mind was already gone. When she was close to death she was making these gargling sounds that sounded like she was drowning. That sound alone is something I will never forget. It was the worst experience of death I have ever experienced. It was literally watching a person you love just slowly fade away mentally. The amount of weight she lost in just those few days. Story 19. The depth of just how terribly my mother has handled the situation with my oldest brother. At 17, I realized he was grooming me. I told on him and it was swept under the rug. I was made to suffer in silence while he was allowed to be hostile to me as long as it was passively aggressive. I was not allowed to talk about what had happened, reporting him wasn't even an offer extended to me, and I never went to therapy for it while I lived at home. I found out later, after I moved out, that a different sister of mine had been groomed as well. It started when she was roughly 8 years old and had continued into her teen years. My mother discovered it when I came forward about how he was grooming me. My mother made my sister keep it a secret from me and, thus, made me think it was an isolated incident. 2.5 weeks ago, my youngest sister told me she had been molested by that very same brother. I determined that based on the timeline she gave me this had been happening around the same time I told our mother he had been grooming me. Which meant that my mother, even after knowing what he had been doing to 2 of her daughters already, did not act to protect my youngest sister from him. Or, rather, she did because she kicked him out after he was found to be trying to peep on her at night. But she never dug deep enough into the situation to realize he had been doing more than peeping during the time she hadn't realized he was doing things. Each of these 3 instances has fucking broke me emotionally. And this last time, it broke me really hard. Because as I drunkenly cried to my college best friend, I had thought the nightmare was finally over and instead I realized it had never ended. And if left in the hands of my mother, it never would. We'd keep finding out stuff like this, over and over, until someone with moral integrity made it end. The wound would keep opening, for me, each time I thought about how someone else had gone through what I did or worse. And, honestly, I think this 3rd time broke things beyond repair. I reported my brother to CPS, for what he has done, and told everyone who already knew about the situation that I had done so. The result is, pretty much none of my family that I wasn't already estranged from will talk to me. I knew that was going to be the result. It was part of what had kept me from reporting over my own abuse, and yet, this time, I did not care. Because realizing that the nightmare won't end, if it keeps getting swept under the rug, made me realize that I have to make it end regardless of the personal cost to me. Otherwise, we run the risk of children we don't even know having their own personal hell inflicted on them by my brother. In my eyes, we had a moral duty to make sure my brother couldn't hurt anyone else, and I was the only one strong enough to both see and act on it. I don't regret the choice I made. I'd do it again in a fucking heartbeat. But, hell, did I have to break to make that choice, and have I broken more since actually doing it? Edit asterisk I didn't think this was going to blow up the way it did. So, let me add some context before too many more people go around thinking I am the morally superior one in this situation. I left out some smaller details because, frankly, I thought I'd just yell into the void and this would not gain much attention. My youngest sister is 17. She was molested 8 years ago and only just discovered 2.5 weeks ago what had happened. She wanted the choice to control when and how it came out that she had been molested, and I promised her I would respect that. Except, after talking to my therapist a few times, I decided that was not a promise I could keep. And so I broke my promise. My sister has had to tell all her younger siblings what was done to her so that when CPS shows up on their doorstep they're not shocked. My older brother lives an hour or so away from them. He does not have ready access to them and was already forbidden from coming over to their place. So, other children were in danger, but none of my siblings were. By and large, the danger to my family was already over with. My choice was also not just one of selflessness and a desire to protect other children. I kind of wanted to see everything go up in metaphorical flames. I relished the thought of my mother facing to face the family and explain why she had swept all of this under the rug and why she wasn't the one to report it. I relished the thought of my older brother losing fucking everything over this. I enjoy the thought of him suffering, for what he did, the very way he made me suffer my whole childhood while he bullied me for my autism. I knew what I did would hurt my youngest sister and make her feel like the situation was out of her control. I knew it, and I did it. Took control away from a victimized person because I selfishly wanted the nightmare to be over for me. For her and my other sister too, mind you, I also wanted the nightmare to be over. But ultimately, I wanted it over with for me most of all. So rest assured, at least in my own eyes, I am not the hero here. I did the right thing, for both the right and wrong reasons, knowing that it would throw someone else's world into chaos. I do not deserve praise. I do not deserve compliments. Frankly, I don't know what I feel like I deserve, but being treated like some hero isn't it? Story 20. I was going through the beginnings of a divorce, unbeknownst to me. It was March 2020, and my birthday just happened to be on the day they announced the initial COVID lockdown. I got home late from work, and my wife at the time had done nothing for my birthday. I was in my 30s, didn't really celebrate anymore anyway. But no card, no gift, not even a mention of my birthday, and she'd eaten the last of my post-work meals. And of course everything is shut down and closed early, so I go off trying to find a gas station for a protein bar. I'm not really that put out, it's par for the course. But I wake up early the next morning to take care of our 6-year-old. He's autistic and emotional connection isn't always the highest on his priority list. But I'm in his room at 5 in the morning and he says, "Daddy, it was your birthday yesterday. How come you didn't get any presents?" I made something up and he asks, "Will you get any today?" I say, "Probably not, pal, but it's okay. Grown-ups don't really celebrate birthdays like kids do." He goes into his closet, gets all his construction paper, and starts taping it together. Then he starts wrapping up his own toys and arranges them in a pile of presents. He says, "This is for you, Daddy." And he and I opened up presents for my birthday. I don't remember a lot of my birthdays, but I remember this one. Story 21. A breakup after a decade-long relationship and losing my job a couple of weeks later. 2020 was definitely tough. But we made it to the other side. Story 22. Toxic families leave people broken for a long time. Story 23. Moving to a different country and realizing how incompatible I am. Story 24. Loneliness. I suffered a mental breakdown because of that in 2017, and still didn't recover completely. It has made my depression worse and it has affected my life deeply. Story 25. My sister attempted suicide and I cut her down from the ceiling while my parents stood in shock. I called 911 and had to perform CPR until first responders arrived. Knowing I'm the only one in my family who can function semi-well under intense pressure freaked me out bad. I still don't sleep well, and that was almost 3 years ago. Story 26. Well, watching someone shoot themselves is pretty ravaging on your mental health. Happened to see my neighbor do this to himself this past weekend. Story 27. Seeing my mom and dad fight every day, and not divorcing. The most heartbreaking was when I saw my dad crying while my mom was screaming at him during an argument, and I had to intervene and hugged him and got him some water to make him stop crying. Wiping tears off my dad's face broke my heart that day. And then went to my mom to do the same. That was actually the first time I ever hugged my mom and my dad. And that was to stop them from arguing while both of them were crying on my shoulder. Sad. During another argument when my mom went to sleep constantly crying, I woke up next day while she was praying loudly, and still crying, and I touched her shoulder and she freaked out. And started acting like a mentally ill patient, screaming and crying and physically pushing us aside as if she was scared of us coming closer to her. I guess either she was exaggerating, she does that a lot, or she was actually deeply traumatized by that particular fight. My life is filled with even more traumatizing events, but these are the most recent ones. Edit. It's so heartbreaking to know so many people were robbed of their childhood because of the bad relationship between their parents. Please feel free to reach out if you ever need anyone to talk to. Sending you hugs. Story 28. I was viciously attacked by a pit bull that ripped half my face apartment. While I was in the ER, I called my girlfriend who I loved and she broke up with me right there over the phone. This led to extreme alcoholism and zero self-confidence as I looked like a monster. It took about 2.5 years to recover from the incident. I still have PTSD if a bigger dog runs up to me without a leash. I have to be on meds to avoid panic attacks if they happen to trigger. Story 29. Finding out my wife was cheating and lying about pretty much everything and my dad dying. All in the space of a few months. I'm a fucking shell of a man, but keep the good side out and keep going for my kids. Story 30. Not getting the proper medical attention I knew I needed / not feeling heard by medical professionals. I had a horrific case of food poisoning, Campylobacter, which is actually fairly common but presented abnormally in me. ER doctors and urgent care kept telling me I was probably just pregnant, which there was no way at that time for that to be possible. Begging for tests to be done but being denied because I was probably pregnant. I couldn't eat or drink anything because I would immediately start cramping and faint. This went on for a week before I found an ER that did a CT scan and tests and discovered the bacteria. I thought I was dying. Story 31. Messing around with polyamory in my marriage, which led to a very hard split. I should have checked myself into a hospital during that time. I'm very lucky I didn't permanently end things for myself. Edit. Just throwing this up here because my comment created some discourse regarding whether polyamory works or not. It's not right for me, but it is right for her. I also did not have a healthy view in it and basically just used it for sex with others because I didn't want to build relationships with other people other than my wife. I had great sexually experiences. But when the relationship between me and my wife collapsed, it left me in a place with no support system because my friends were originally her friends. I was questioning my masculinity and sexuality greatly, and I was completely wrecked from the experience. It has taken a lot of work on myself and therapy to be at a place of happiness now. Story 32. Death in the family. Wasn't in the car accident, but it really messes with my head to think about how I said for them to have a great day, then for them to just be gone no less than 24 hours later. Story 33. Being the subject of bullying from kids and abuse from teachers at school, then my dad acting like it was my fault. Story 34. Sexual assault. I couldn't leave after because I had my first panic attack on his bathroom floor. Made me feel so trapped, all I wanted to do was get the hell out, but I couldn't move. 8 years later I still get them frequently. The anxiety doesn't leave you, I guess. Story 35. I'm a nurse and I've seen so many awful things, but for whatever reason one that sticks with me and pops up in my memories often happened in nursing school. I was doing clinicals, student nurse working in hospital, and my patient son had died in a car wreck the night before and the family was coming to tell him during my shift. When they arrived, I stepped out to give them privacy, but I heard his cry. The sound a parent makes when they are told their child is dead is something that will chill you to the bone. He also happened to be on telemetry, a heart monitor, and I was watching his rhythm when he got the news. He threw several PVCs and I swear it was like watching his heart break. Story 36. 15 years of hardcore drug addiction. 3.5 years sober now. Story 37. The monotonous life I'm living, like a robot. It's a never-ending nightmare. Story 38. Being told that the mass that was picked up during a routine ultrasound for IVF was ovarian cancer and I had been booked for a full hysterectomy. 4 years of trying to have a child, 1 failed round of IVF and now no biological way of having one, plus 6 rounds of chemotherapy. Story 39. Realizing my best friend will never care about me as deeply as I care about them, and I'll never be as important to them as they are to me. Story 40. I could honestly give a lot of things that have fucked me up, but I've bounced back from most of them. The one thing that broke me entirely last year was the death of my grandfather. He'd had a stroke around April 2021. April 1, 2022, he had to be rushed to the hospital. I dropped everything to go see him. I'd been pretty close with him growing up. My grandparents raised me and my sister, and he and I used to go to Gettysburg together a lot. He was in the hospital all of April, with declining health. We would visit all the time. He developed sepsis, and we wanted to move him to hospice, but by the end of the month even moving him would probably kill him. April 28th, it was my first week at a new job and my aunt texted that we should all hurry over to the hospital because they didn't think there was much time. I left work and stayed at the hospital with my family all day. The nurses let us break COVID protocol and all stay in the room as long as we were quiet. We all had gowns, masks, and gloves anyway because he had sepsis. At that point, he was practically in a coma. We thought he would pass that day, but he didn't, and when it came time for me to leave I knew it would be the last time I'd see him alive. I sobbed so much I almost threw up and it was almost impossible to drag me out. The next day, he was gone. The following week was the funeral and viewing. The viewing broke me too. I cried so much those days, especially when we had to close the casket for the funeral. We all left little things for him to be buried with. Cherry chapstick, Guinness, and a little alligator plush I'd brought. I have the matching one. He always used to say, "See you later, alligator," and I would say, after a while, crocodile. So now I always tell him, "See you later, alligator," at his grave, as that's what I told him before he died, and before they buried him. April 29th this year will mark the first full year he's been gone. I've never handled death well, so it still hurts a lot. But he was in so much pain, and I know he went peacefully and he's not suffering anymore. He believed in heaven, and that's where I hope he is. Story 41. Splitting up with the wife. The funeral of a murdered friend. Story 42. When my ex-girlfriend was playing the victim again and decided to hold a giant kitchen knife to her stomach / I have never felt so helpless and abused. Story 43. My dad using me as a punching bag every day after he got off work for 12 years, then seeing him get away with all of it because he was a cop. Story 44. Marrying the wrong person. Thanks for tuning in to Peak Reddit. We hope you enjoyed hearing the latest and greatest stories from the most interesting corners of Reddit. If you loved what you saw and heard today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join the Peak Reddit community. You can check out more videos from us, you might like them. And if you have any amazing stories or experiences that you want to share with us, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a comment or shoot us a message and let us know what you think. We'll see you in the next video.